Hello, this is Disaster Area. I'm narrating the Master Tournament 33 finals between Peasounay and Diegolh. They're both French players. Peasounay has been absolutely on a storm this year with the best score in SPL, amongst other things, and winning the Global Championship Osmogon as well as some decent season achievements. The end result, as it happens in this season, is that he does come second place in the player rankings. Diegolh, meanwhile, hasn't had as much success, but has managed to win a Master Tournament before, so he's certainly no slouch either. Peasounay often hypes up his friends, so this is a good battle between two friends, two Frenchies. Let's get it. It's a best of 5. We see Starmie versus Starmie. Often we see switches out because of players not liking to have their Starmies paralysed, as well as for fear of Thunderbolt. But it seems that these two are both willing to stick it out turn 1 and go for the Thunder Wave. Peasounay, however, is not willing to stay in and risk being Thunderbolted and switches out to his Chansey, which is a very safe switch. With his Starmie paralysed, he can use that to block sleep. So, given that his Chansey likely has Thunderbolt here, it'll be interesting to see what Diegolh goes into. The most likely thing is his own Exeggutor or his own, what do you call it, Chansey. So, if it's his own Chansey, it's sort of a bit of a stalemate. If it's his own Exeggutor, then he forces the Chansey out, but not to do much, since the Starmie just comes in and retaliate. So it'll be interesting to see how either player generates a fence here or whether it goes down to a freeze war. But we see Diegolh staying in with his Starmie unusually, going for a Thunder Wave there, deciding that it's worth 50% of his Starmie's health, which I don't agree with. I'd rather personally go to my own Chansey, Thunder Wave, and then go Lax, if that was the sequence you want to go for, which I think isn't unreasonable. We see a 2-5-5 there from Peasounay with this Thunder Wave, although we can pretend that that's just a full parrot in this instance, but anticipated the Snorlax switching in, which was clearly signalled. But I do find it curious that Diegolh decided that it was worth that much HP on his Starmie, since now he can be KO'd by, for example, Taurus's Hyper Beam. But we see the Snorlax coming in, and it's now very threatening here against his paralysed Chansey. Will we see Peasounay staying in Thunder Wave? Will he go for a counter? Will the Snorlax Earthquake, anticipating a counter? Will Peasounay switch out, for example, to Exeggutor, hoping for an Earthquake to come down, letting him in more easily? Many things are possible. Since Chansey's revealed Thunderbolt though on Peasounay's end, counter's very unlikely, so Snorlax is almost definitely going to Body Slam, and unless Peasounay has something like a Golem to switch in here, this is a tricky turn for Peasounay. Whatever he does is going to be quite risky, because Diegolh's made it so that he doesn't have a choice. The best case scenario might be to paralyze the Snorlax with his Chansey, soft-boiled, and then switch out in some way. Another option is to go to his own Snorlax, especially if it's a Reflect set, then he'll be alright versus the Snorlax, although he does risk losing momentum in a scenario like that. But it could work out in his favour, so let's see what happens. Yeah, we do see Snorlax switching in, no critical hit or anything. Do we see Reflect? Do we see counter? We do see Reflect coming up, but due to Snorlax winning that speed tie, Diegolh Snorlax winning that speed tie, Snorlax has already lost 50% on Peasounay's end, whilst Diegolh is just fully healthy. So now he can go to perhaps Chansey of his own, which isn't too threatened by it. He can boost up, he can sort of build up, unafraid of critical hits. He can go for a Thunder Wave. Since Snorlax is very unlikely to have Hyper Beam here, although it could, but no, Peasounay is not that kind of player. He can paralyze it and then soft boiled up on it. I don't anticipate, Peasounay can't really take advantage of that, since if you for example to go into Chansey to abuse the paralyzed Thunder Wave being thrown out by Diegolh Chansey, he still lost 50% on his Snorlax for nothing besides being able to throw out an Ice Beam and Pro for a freeze. So I'm not sure how Peasounay heals out the Snorlax. I guess the goal is to rest it up at some point, which would enable him heal the lax, but he risks being pressured by most likely the Executor coming in and firing off psychics, and that in turn makes the Snorlax more deadly the next time it comes in. So long term, I still feel like this is a losing scenario for Peasounay, but we'll see what happens. Diegolh decides that it's worth trading for a hit there with his Snorlax rather than going into Chansey. So Peasounay does take advantage of that with getting that body slam off, and a critical hit body slam from Diego's Snorlax would be troubling for Peasounay. But he's almost forced to rest here or next turn, which he can take advantage of. Diegolh can take advantage of by going into Snorlax, but he stays in and rests there, and Diegolh decides to body slam again. Peasounay wasn't necessarily forced to rest there, but if he didn't, he would be almost guaranteed to do it on the following turn or the turn afterwards. Diegolh switches in Executor and is free to fire off a Psychic here, leaving that Snorlax at 87% and asleep. Starmie comes in as it can to block the other sleep, and to take the Psychic. With the special fall, Diego's own Starmie can come in, take the Thunder Wave or Blizzard, whichever. More likely to see Thunder Wave there, and can recover up and threaten with Thunderbolt. Chansey comes in return. So the Starmie does manage to heal up, but now Snorlax can come in again, and he has the hope to hit Thunder Wave this time, and then to try and make use of the Snorlax, which is asleep, switches in on Body Slam on the turn that it wakes up. Here he goes to Executor again instead of trying to Body Slam with the risk of fully paralysing. I'm not necessarily sure that that was the best choice, but it definitely does put the pressure on Peasounay with Psychic and Sleep Powder. If it is a Hyper Beam Executor, for example, then this could cause some issues with a couple of full paralyses from the Starmie or Chansey, as well as Spec Falls and critical hits from Executor Psychic. So let's see if Diegolh gets any relevant luck. He does get a critical hit there, but no Spec Fall with his Executor Psychic there. He may stay in and push the issue, or maybe he'll try and pressure the Starmie with a Zapdos switching, for example, here, which is an option. Although it's possible that if he does have a Zapdos, he'll be keeping it for later on in the game. Or he could just go Starmie here, play it safely, and threaten with Thunderbolt as the Starmie goes for a recover. I don't think that would be a sensible play. I think he needs to put the pressure on and play for some luck at this point. But maybe he disagrees. Let's see. Yes, he does stay in and go for a Psychic. He does get a special fall. Starmie does get a recover off, but with the special fall, he can either go Starmie again, anticipating the Thunder Wave, or even the Snorlax, which can fire off a Body Slam safely here. Due to the special fall, would it outspeed the Starmie, or he can go to his own Starmie, or he can stay in and force the issue. I don't know whether it's worth it for Peasounay, for Diegolh to go that and risk getting his Executor paralysed, since that's a useful fall and pressure on this Snorlax. So let's see what he does. He goes to his Snorlax, as there's another recover instead of a Thunder Wave from Peasounay, which is the safer play. If another Circuit came down from Executor, then that would still almost definitely leave him at full, and it gives him coverage should Diegolh switch out. It's not like he can do much to the Snorlax or the Starmie. So yeah, in comes the Snorlax again, but okay, we see a Chansey double switch there. Presume that he anticipated Snorlax switching in there. I mean, that's what I would most expect. I don't really see the purpose of staying in there with Starmie. Going into his own Chansey is perhaps an option, but I don't understand the Chansey switch there. I guess he anticipated Snorlax coming in and could threaten him out by the Seal or something, but no, I don't. I think, if anything, I would have gone to Executor or something there. Or whatever his 6th is, maybe. Just depend a bit on his 6th, but the Starmie's still paralysed, so what does it matter? But Peasounay's Chansey can switch in his comfortably, and Snorlax is as threatening as ever to it. So we see Snorlax double back in as Chansey switches in. as anticipated, but this isn't a dreadful matchup for Peasounay. He does risk full paralyses. That's not the end of the world, but if he does go to Snorlax here, which is an option, then Exeggutor switching in on the turn in which he might go for a Reflect would cause some issues for him, and if he goes for Rest, then that also leaves him quite vulnerable. At the same time, if Snorlax fully paralyzes on the turn that Lax switches in, then that would be to Peasounay's benefit, and he would be in a stronger position. So let's see, does he go for it? Yes, he does decide that it's worth it. Do we see a Reflect here? Anticipating the Snorlax going for either a Hyper Beam or a Body Slam here? Or do we see Exeggutor switching in which case Peasounay might be better off either resting or Body Slamming. But either of those moves leaves it in not quite as good of a position against the Snorlax, as then Diegolh could follow up on the rest turn if the Snorlax does say in a Body Slam, Peases Snorlax Body Slams with his own Taurus or his own Exeggutor. The Taurus would be more threatening, although Body Slam plus Hyper Beam is a roll versus Chansey, versus Starmie, sorry. But there's nothing else that would like to switch in there. But at the same time, if Taurus doesn't get any critical hits, Snorlax with Reflect can just about come on top there. But it is difficult. And Diegolh would definitely be able to force it out, even if it did come down to that. So, to me, I think that this is an advantageous position for Diegolh. We see Snorlax switch in, as Peasounay does go for the Body Slam. So, in some ways, Peasounay won that mind game. Made it work for him, but I think that was a difficult play to make. He does get the paralysis, which is definitely very handy, but the Snorlax is now only at 35%, and next time it switches in, he'll be forced to rest. He absolutely has to switch out here, as he's in range of a Psychic, and a critical hit one would absolutely maul it and put it out of commission completely, even if it rests here. Whilst he has safer switches in Starmie and Chansey, and he can reflect up later, possibly versus the Snorlax or versus Diegolh Chansey, and he needs it in some respects to break Diegolh Chansey. So there's definitely a switch out here coming with Chansey or Starmie being the more likely, and it's a question of whether we'll see Diegolh retort for whether he'll use a Psychic here, which is the safest play, or whether he'll do something more aggressive. But we haven't seen a more aggressive line of play available yet to Diegolh. The best thing might be to go to Snorlax, but that does introduce some risk in how he wishes to handle it. So let's see what he does. He goes for Psychic. Does he get a special fall? He does, so this is an okay position for the Exeggutor. Blizzard at -1 for Starmie does only around 25%, so he definitely is at liberty to push the issue here if he so chooses. Which he has a little bit so far, but not when Starmie's been this healthy. Most likely play is probably a Recover or something here from Peasounay's Starmie though. If the Exeggutor stays in as Recover goes down though, then that does put Peasounay in a slightly stronger position. But then again, if he does get a special fall again, or if Starmie fully paralyzes, then that does put Diegolh in a very good position to do some serious damage with that Exeggutor. We see instead the safer play of Starmie coming in, safer but not very aggressive. So we see Blizzard come down instead from Peasounay. Starmie deciding not to sit still and recover up there, going for the slightly more risky play, and he critical hits the Starmie, so he does do some solid damage, but only because of the critical hit. Had there not been one, it would have done about 9% and bounced off the Starmie very easily, and forced Peasounay's own Chansey in, although he could potentially go Exeggutor, anticipating a switch in there by Snorlax or Chansey. Yep, so Chansey comes in for Peasounay. The Snorlax is a very safe switch there again, as the -1 Starmie does not want to take a Thunderbolt, and there's it would be terrible risk reward to stay in there. We also don't even know if Peasounay's Starmie carries Thunderbolt. It's revealed Blizzard, Thunderwave, and Recover so far. But not Thunderbolt or Psychic, which are both viable 4th move options in the lead slot for the Starmie. But even if it does have Thunderbolt, it wouldn't be wise to use it there. Snorlax is a very safe switch in there, as even if for some reason somebody does decide to stay in, it is comfortable versus it, but more importantly, it pressures the Chansey, which is almost guaranteed to switch in at that point. Do we see Hyper Beam here, or do we see Body Slam, anticipating the Snorlax coming in? And Diegolh manages to call it correctly, Hyper Beaming on the switch there. If Peasounay had a Rock, which he very likely doesn't due to having a Reflect Snorlax, that would have been the ideal turn to switch it into. But the Hyper Beam's fairly safe there, as even though Chansey would live it, it's unlikely that it stays in, or that he has any other sort of recourse versus it, and it's very risky for Exeggutor or something else on Peasounay's team to switch into that Snorlax, since Body Slam was also quite likely to come down, and Exeggutor would absolutely hate taking a Body Slam. But had he switched in on a Hyper Beam there and it hadn't critical hit, which was a risk to take, but Snorlax's critical hit rate is only about 1 in 20, so there's only about a 3 in 80 chance of losing his Exeggutor straight up on that happening, and he would be able to put to sleep this Snorlax, since due to a wonderful RBY glitch, sleep can overwrite paralysis if it's on a Hyper Beam recharge, between when the Hyper Beam hits and when it recharges. It's 100% guaranteed to hit, no chance of a 255 or anything, no accuracy check. One of those wonderful RBY glitches, but no, Diegolh manages to make the correct call there, Hyper Beams, and now Peasounay is on the back foot. He'll have a harder time breaking that Chansey, although he does have the advantage in a way with his Chansey being paralysed. But more importantly, this Snorlax is going to be difficult to take down now, so let's see what response he wishes to follow up with. My most likely bet is an Exeggutor here. Firing off a Psychic would pressure whatever chooses to switch in here. With Starmie at 70%, would be at about 50% after a Psychic. A critical hit or a Specs drop would put it in much deeper troubles, and the chip damage on Exeggutor would be quite useful, albeit if he's carrying something, if he's not carrying a Rock, which looks likely given not switching it in there, then that's probably less useful, as he's unlikely to have a last that actually requires having Exeggutor chipped away at. It's more likely that he carries something like a Zapdos here. Judging by the team, it's hard to discern Diego's last though, at this point. But if it is a Zapdos or something, that would also be very useful at pressuring here. But if Snorlax got the opportunity to explode on Zapdos with self-destruct, that would be a great trade for Diegolh. So if he does a Zapdos, there's certainly very real downsides for Peasounay to bring it in here. So let's see what he follows up with. And we do see Exeggutor following up as anticipated. Psychic very likely to come down here. And it does, and we see no critical hit, no special fall. Peasounay goes to Chansey to follow it up. Starmie does fully paralyze, which certainly helps Exeggutor the next time it wishes to switch in, but Diegolh still has his own Exeggutor which can block sleep as well, at least for a limited time. It can stun Spore, and then let Starmie switch in and recover up versus it. So it's a little way gained, but Diegolh still very much has strong options to block Peasounay's sleep, and vice versa. But Diegolh has the very real advantage in having that Snorlax which can fire off Body Slams fairly freely versus this Chansey. Peasounay will be aiming to chip at this Snorlax as much as he can, and to not let it self-destruct on something valuable. The question is then what is the most valuable thing on what is the least valuable thing on Peasounay's team? And it's hard to determine at this point, since it's difficult, I think, still to determine Diego's last. If it had been a rock, if it had been an electric, if it had been a water, in all of those cases it would be very unlikely that it would have switched in at this point. So we do see Snorlax coming in, as we anticipate, body slam coming down here, and he's deciding that Starmie is much less valuable than the Chansey. Neither is terribly comfortable versus the Snorlax, albeit if it's a Psychic Starmie, which if he is, he may not want to reveal it quite yet, since that would indicate that Diegol's own Starmie can handle it 1v1 comfortably, as well as his own Chansey. Then that would be decent versus it, but both it and Chansey are 3-hit KO'd by Body Slam and KO'd by Body Slam plus Hyper Beam, and both have recovery, so it's fairly equal there. But Chansey keeps both that Starmie, the Chansey, and that Exeggutor at bay, whilst this Starmie most likely loses to that Chansey, albeit it could very likely be a counter, reflect, or Sing version of Chansey on this team. So, yeah, it's not certain that this Starmie actually loses to that Starmie, but we see Diegolh pushing the issue with his Thunderbolt Starmie, and we now see whether Peasounay has Thunderbolt on his, and he does not go for it, and decides that it's better off to switch out of that potential Thunderbolt and let Diegolh get that recover off comfortably. So it does indicate that it's likely a Thunderbolt Starmie, since if it a Psychic Starmie, since if it was Thunderbolt Starmie, you would like to push the issue there, but that does give Chansey the opportunity to chip at Snorlax again with the Thunderbolt here. Instead we see Ice Beam coming down, anticipating perhaps a Chansey switch in, and it was just a better coverage move in general there, since that Starmie has no business staying in there versus that Chansey, and it can freeze anything, does more to the Exeggutor as well, so it's likely that we see a self-destruct soon from the Snorlax, and we do see Rhydon switching in, surprisingly earlier that it didn't switch in on the Hyper Beam. Yeah, that is a big surprise, but it does make the Exeggutor play make a little more sense and stuff. Now that Snorlax is in range of an Earthquake, he switches in on a Body Slam, anticipating probably a self-destruct, but the Snorlax is in Earthquake range, and Earthquake will still sting this Exeggutor, doing 20%, which is enough to put it in range of a Taurus Hyper Beam at least some of the time. We see a switch out mandated here. Starmie comes in. Now, since that Exeggutor is likely the only sleeper on that team, and because he needs it to check Rhydon further, although at this point it does die to 2 Rock Slides, we don't see Diegolh exploding anytime soon, probably, since unless he can really has to do it to cut his losses. So we see anticipating Starmie switching in, we see an awesome double switch there by Peasounay into his Chansey, anticipating either Chansey or Starmie to switch in there whilst covering Exeggutor staying in as well, although that wasn't going to happen. This gives another opportunity to fire off a Thunderbolt or Ice Beam at that Snorlax. And we see Thunderbolt deciding to keep Diegolh honest there. And we see a full paralysis there with yeah, I don't understand why Diegolh switched in the Chansey then switched out. I guess Ice Beam was coming down, but he must have been praying for a full paralysis, which he had 7 in 16 chance, I think, for one of these 2 turns to be a full paralysis. But yeah, 1 in 4 chance of that happening, and he does get it. How do we see an Earthquake, or do we see a self-destruct here? I expect a self-destruct here, but Peasounay prays for a full paralysis or critical hit there, and we see Earthquake, having revealed that Rhydon. Making good use of that. We've seen Hyper Beam, Body Slam, and so it was unlikely that this was a rest variant of Snorlax, almost definitely a self-destruct version, so yeah. Oh my. Well, that's something, isn't it? He stays in there, Peasounay stays in there, and gets fully paralyzed trying to KO the Snorlax with his Chansey. and Snorlax manages to take him out with a Hyper Beam. It was a fairly safe Hyper Beam since it was very unlikely that Rhydon was switching into that. But yeah, the Earthquake did serve him quite well, since it does to some extent mean that he could follow up with Tauros afterwards if the Snorlax went down. But yeah, okay, I think that's an interesting and quite good line of play there. Now we see Peasounay using his Tauros correctly, using it to revenge kill this Snorlax. Nothing wants to switch into this Body Slam, nothing. And that's what we have, and Diegolh rightly acknowledges that it's best to sacrifice his Snorlax rather than save it for some potential other use. Alright, at this point, who has the upper hand is a good question now. Peasounay has the Tauros and Rhydon, which are both very threatening. At the same time, I don't feel like either team can really get the sleep advantage, and the chance is going to be very difficult for Peasounay to manage if it's the standard Bolt Beam variant. Most likely a Thunder Wave comes down here. But yeah, the only means that Peasounay really has of forcing it out is with Sleep Powder, with Exeggutor, and that's very easily blanked by Diego's own Exeggutor and Starmie, so I'm not sure how Peasounay takes this one. Alright, I'm not going to pause it anymore, I don't think, at this point, since, okay, well, that's interesting. So Peasounay does anticipate the Chansey Thunder Waving, as he should, and goes into his own Starmie. The threat of Thunder Wave is enough to actually do some work there, to force it out, and force Starmie in, just because Diegolh can play very safely and avoid Chansey getting paralyzed for most of the game, making it much more threatening to Peasounay's team and making it not vulnerable to Rhydon. We see... Whoa! That's a strange set. Is that Thunderbolt Psychic? I'm going to use Control Mech here. So we've seen it use Thunder Wave, Thunderbolt, Recover, and Psychic, no Blizzard. That's very surprising. That's not a set you often see. But it does work as a lead. And it isn't a bad set, but it is very uncommon. But he goes for Psychic. They're anticipating that Peasounay goes for the Rhydon to pressure the switch in. Had Diegolh had Blizzard here, it would have been much more dangerous, though. That's certainly very interesting. I do like that set, but at the same time, then I disagree with him trading for Paralysis turn 1. I would have gone Chansey there or something, personally. But it's a matter of preference, isn't it? So, but yeah, that's yeah, this Rhydon is probably now forced to switch out. Since Exeggutor can 1v1 the Starmie fairly well, since there's nothing to hit it super effectively on that Starmie, and it would be risking losing the Rhydon for no gain if he stays in here. At the same time, there would be high reward if he did manage to get a full paralysis next turn on an Earthquake. I suspect that Diegolh will probably switch to Chansey here, just in case Peasounay does decide to go for it, and it does cover Exeggutor switching in as well, reasonably well. So yeah, we do see Exeggutor switch in. We see another Psychic come down from Starmie instead. You see Diegolh deciding that it's better to face off the Exeggutor with his Starmie and threaten the Rhydon that way. We see Rhydon double back in on what was likely a Thunder Wave, but Diegolh correctly predicts it and lands another Psychic on the Rhydon, letting it get off absolutely nothing. We see Rock Slide come down, anticipating an Exeggutor switch in, goes for another Psychic, and Diegolh is managing to snowball this lead. This Starmie isn't even in Hyper Beam range, since he went for Rock Slide rather than Earthquake there, which would have 2-hit KO'd the Exeggutor. Since it didn't come in, it didn't come down to that, so we see so I was just reading some of the chat relating to Lush was speaking with the two about the French elections. I know Peasounay and Diegolh are both good, fairly anti-establishment, lefty kind of types. So neither of them are happy with Macron, as they shouldn't be. So anyway, back to the game. Sorry for a second there. Toros goes for the body slam, hoping for a critical hit. Still in with the shot with that, but he doesn't get it. Peasounay, Diegolh doesn't fully paralyze, gets off the Thunder Wave, and this game is all but over now. And it's RBY, so Peasounay is still definitely not out, but he does have to play for hacks, and he isn't getting it. And Peasounay forfeits and decides that it's not worth his time at this point. Diegolh had accrued enough of an advantage. I'd argue that maybe he should have played it out anyway, but with the Toros so crippled there was almost no hope. So yeah, that was a well-deserved win by Diegolh. He managed to get small advantages and managed to snowball them. That ride-on was well hidden by Peasounay, but I think that he showed it too late almost, and I think that he could have gotten better use out of it had he revealed it earlier and punished Diego's Snorlax with it earlier in the game. And I feel like that's really where this game went wrong for Peasounay. It was just a small thing with the Snorlax interactions where Diegolh managed to come out on top there. Alright, on to game 2. This time Diegolh on the bottom side, Peasounay on the top, and I think that's going to be how the rest of these go. I don't remember if I swapped sides. I didn't swap sides at the start. Okay, so Diegolh on the bottom with Jinx lead, Alakazam lead on top. Lovely hits coming down, but not connecting. Alakazam spamming Seismic Toss. Now do we see Blizzard from Jinx? Do we see Tauros or Snorlax coming in for Diegolh to pressure? Do we see Chansey or a Starmie or Slowbro coming in for Peasounay, or do we see him staying with Alakazam, fishing for a wake up? Do we see a freeze? Do we see full paralysis? A lot of things can happen, as definitely open as to what is the best line of play, and to some extent it does depend on the team. We see Blizzard come in, no critical hit, and no freeze. We see Seismic Toss revealed from the Chansey, indicating that this is probably a race Chansey. We anticipate a rest here from the Jinx. There's a small chance that it's counter rather than reflect there on the Chansey, but he manages to avoid getting it frozen and uses this opportunity to get in Snorlax to pressure the sleeping Jinx. That definitely will come in handy. The less room that he gives this Jinx, the better. Means the less chance he has to freeze with it, and the less effectively it can block sweep. And sleeping Jinx is the biggest bait for a Tauros that there is in the metagame. Honestly, it's really the most easy. Does just give away 3 turns like that. So making sure that he doesn't give up a single turn of Jinx's rest does give Peasounay the advantage here. Although if it's an Ice Beam sort of Chansey here, then well, we'll see how the Chansey Snorlax interaction goes down. We'll see. He decides that the best line of play is to self-destruct the Snorlax on the on the Chansey, which makes that the Exeggutor lead likely has a lot more dangerous, and his own Chansey a lot more difficult to beat as well. So let's see what each player brings into follow-up. I mean, Peasounay can go Chansey fairly comfortably here. Reflect up if it's a Snorlax, Thunder Wave for Tauros, Thunder Wave for Exeggutor as well, and so on. We see Exeggutor instead coming in to pressure the Sleep, which is also a very fine line of play, and probably better than the Chansey line actually. Although this likely will bring in the Sleeping Jinx. We'll see if Diegolh goes for an Explosion or Stun Spore here. he stays in, whatever he may have gone for. Peasounay wins the speed tie and lands the sleep powder. And it's most likely that he goes to his Tauros here to pressure Diegolh, which is the right play. Diegolh stays in with Exeggutor and looks to get hammered by it. He tries to wake up with it and doesn't get it. He has to cut his losses here, goes Snorlax. But Peasounay's Chansey is a very comfortable switch in here, and even though Snorlax only barely wins this 1v1 with Snorlax either way. So we see Peasounay staying in. Whatever he has lost must be more comfortable at cleaning up. Maybe it's a Persian or a Starmie or something. With the Chansey down, that could definitely be the case. That a Starmie here would be awesomely effective. But we see Body Slam there. We don't see counter or self-destruct from the Snorlax as of yet. Now it's in range of a Hyper Beam. Peasounay goes for it. We don't see a Rock or something from Diegolh. And instead he accepts it, goes to his own Tauros, afterwards to follow up, which is reasonably threatening. How healthy is that Exeggutor? I guess, has it taken anything yet? Oh, that Exeggutor is fully healthy at this point. But I would probably sacrifice, I would probably go for the Tauros. Oof. Well, I guess he wants to save the Tauros to clean up with him, but then again, I don't agree with him staying in there. With his Tauros and losing the HP like that, because it's so valuable for this Tauros 1v1. The Lapras, which is now switching in here, is an interesting response to the Hyper Beam, but at the same time, I think given that the chance is already down, it might be a lot more threatening if he didn't let it take that unnecessary damage. But it's enough to do some serious damage here. He gets a low roll with the Blizzard. It does have a chance to 2-hit KO the Snorlax, the Tauros. Diegolh reveals that he doesn't really have much of a response to it. Body Slams there, and decides to it does get a critical hit, so it's another free opportunity for Diegolh to hit here. Do we see Peasounay decide that it's worth preserving the Lapras and switching in an Alakazam to take the hit, or do we see the Lapras deciding it's time to follow itself, and then follow up with Exeggutor or Chansey, which are the only things left which live the Tauros? He decides that it's worth sacrificing the Lapras, which I disagree with. I feel like that line of play indicated that he didn't have a great Lapras response in his final Pokemon, so I wouldn't have done that. But Exeggutor can come in here, Jinx can come in, Tauros is bound to switch in here, and we see Zapdos switch in, which was a reasonable thing to actually expect at the end. Well, that's interesting. That sheds a bit of a different light on things, doesn't it? Still makes me there's still upsides and downsides to not going to the other Chansey to handle Diego's Snorlax, rather going for it with the Tauros. Either the Tauros or the Chansey are both useful versus this Zapdos, but in differing ways. But now he can go to the Chansey and respond to the Zapdos quite comfortably. But he instead decides to stay in with Exeggutor, goes for the Stun Spore, but now his Chansey is the only thing left which lives a Tauros Hyper Beam at this range. So whether he can clean up with that, with the Chansey sweep, I don't know. I feel like Peasounay had an advantage that he really could have steamrolled through to the end here, but didn't. The Zapdos goes for an agility there, and isn't fully paralyzed. Exeggutor doesn't critical hit. Do we see Exeggutor stay in, or do we decide that it's worth that it's saving it later for the boom? I would definitely save it for the boom, since there's the sleeping Jinx and the sleeping Exeggutor, both of which it can use as an opportunity to boom on. But no, instead he decides to keep it there, and I disagree with that as well. But maybe it was worth it for not letting the Chansey risk getting critical hit drill packed, although I think I disagree with that. He's going to have a hard time getting past the Zapdos with the Chansey anyway, possibly. But see, does critical hit is the question here. If it does, then it'll leave it in range of that Tauros. Tauros can still go for it with critical hits. And there's a critical hit drill peck. Do we see a full power? No, we don't. We see a soft boiled. Another drill peck. Another full power. Another soft boiled coming. Last chance to critical hit. And the Child Seed comes out of that. Still swinging. Jinx comes in. Still sends another turn asleep. Tauros comes into pressure instead. Free opportunity to body slam. And the Exeggutor wakes up, and Diegolh decides it's better to sacrifice the Jinx at that point. Tauros speed tie, he has to go for the Hyper Beam here. And he decides to sacrifice the Alakazam to that. Does he stay in and try and wake up? No. He goes for the Chansey, which can live a Tauros Hyper Beam here. But if the Chansey's critical hit or fully paralyzed, then that's game over for him. But no, he gets off the Seismic Toss, and Peasounay wins the game. Although I disagreed with some of his plays, in the end he did more or less have a matchup advantage and played well early on and was able to just about carry it through, although I disagree with perhaps the way that he did it. But that was a well-played game, a fairly well-played game by both sides again. So they're 1-1 in this up to 5 game set. First to 3 wins. Alakazam versus Alakazam this game. Trading paralysis, rather than one going to the Exeggutor early on for the early sleep. So let's patiently watch this Alakazam Ditto. The goal will be to get Snorlax in at some point, or a Golem or Rhydon to threaten the Alakazam. A Psychic Special Fall would be very handy as well. Snorlax switches in quite comfortably on Seismic Toss, but Alakazam can stay in and Thunder Wave, or there's any number of ways that can be retaliated against. But ideally what you want is your opponent switching out a low health Alakazam. Let's see how they do it. Diegolh goes for another Psychic and gets a Special Fall there, which is definitely advantageous. Do we see a switch out yet? No, we do not. See a Seismic Toss there. We might see a switch from Peas. No, we don't. Continuing to force the issue even with the slower Alakazam. Due to our RBY's mechanics, he is slower due to the Special Fall. Snorlax comes in and pressures at the Alakazam, forced to switch out. In comes the Golem. It was quite funny that every time he got off the recover was followed up by a Seismic Toss, and then the one time that he fully paralyzes, in comes the Snorlax. But in comes the Golem, switches in comfortably. Takes the body slam fine, no paralysis. Baits an Earthquake the next turn. It doesn't go into to Exeggutor next turn. He could have gone for an Earthquake there for good damage there, but instead doesn't. In comes Cloyster, which is curious. I would have definitely gone Exeggutor or something there instead. Oh, actually no, the Cloyster is neat because it pressures the likely Exeggutor switch in. Given how low the Alakazam is, not that it's low, but it's pressurably low, being able to pressure that is quite neat. So we've seen 3 non-big 4 Pokemon on Diego's team, so we can assume the last are Tauros, Chansey, and Exeggutor almost certainly, given what's been revealed now. But that body slam critical hit is terrible for the Cloyster. Poor cut Madonna. You can tell I'm not Italian by how I say those words with no accent whatsoever. So yeah, that's definitely an advantage for Peasounay there. But at the same time, what does he have to switch in? I mean, the most likely thing is now Chansey switches in. Do we see a self-destruct? In comes a Starmie instead of revealing that he has that. And he gets a Blizzard Freeze, which is huge. I mean, had he gone for an explosion there, it wouldn't have cared the Starmie, so it would have been risky had that been what he had, and it's definitely worth firing off at least one Blizzard just to see if there's a Starmie and go for a potential freeze. and that pays off handsomely. Although the Sami can be used to block the closest clamps and so on for quite some time, using that to switch in his own Chansey, which he likely has. It's possible that Diegolh doesn't have a Chansey and instead has Snorlax there or something, but it's unlikely. Let's see what happens. In comes Starmie on the Chansey on the clamp, which misses. Chansey comes in. We see Thunderwave, anticipating Snorlax, I guess, or Chansey. Deciding that his best approach is to go for the paralysis on the Chansey and pressure with Snorlax, I guess. But in comes the Alakazam, which is also capable of blocking a Sing. And he reveals that he is in fact a Seismic Toss Chansey. Diegolh manages to get the Thunder Wave off, and now has this opportunity to recover. We see Snorlax switching in, trying for the recover, the full paralysis. Closer switches back in, takes a Hyper Beam from the Snorlax and presumably explodes on it, and indeed he does. Although with the explosion being so weak in RBY, even though it cuts the defense in half, it's only 170 BP, so it only hits 140 base power, and he can follow up with Golem Earthquake, since Tauros Hyper Beam KOs from there, but not Tauros Body Slam. But in comes the Exeggutor, which Diegolh is now in a tough spot. He has to go to Alakazam here to block sleep, but a double switch from Snorlax would be the end of him there. And we instead see Psychic come down from Peasounay, which is the safest play. And chances are we see Alakazam recover here, or Thunder Wave. Alakazam fully paralyzes. Presumably, Peasounay is going to try and force an FP on a recover, like a forced recover, and use that to get Snorlax in and either fire off a Body Slam or an Earthquake or something, or an Explosion. Now, Alakazam is basically forced here to recover. If he did go for a Psychic and knock out the Alakazam, Tauros would be able to revenge kill, and if he doesn't, then Snorlax can come in and fire off a Body Slam here. So the best play is probably to recover anyway with the Alakazam, even though that switch is very much signalled. And he decides to stay in, and the Snorlax gets a high roll Body Slam, but not high enough to knock him out. And he does go for the Psychic instead. And in comes the Tauros to revenge kill the Alakazam. And now that Exeggutor can reliably get sleep, as Diegolh has no paralyzed Pokemon on his team. In comes the Exeggutor though, which can threaten a Sleep Powder here. Chansey or Alakazam has to switch into that. And an awesome double switch there by Diegolh brings Golem in there, but I would have rather to have gone Snorlax if he had that. Presumably he mustn't have had that. Which allows him to pressure the Chansey or the Alakazam if that switches in. Does he explode here? Does he Body Slam? He does Body Slam. He could have Fire Blasted, although that's quite uncommon. But he already revealed a Psychic T-Bolt Sami in the first game, so you never know. Could be a fun sets. But he goes for it there. Maybe he fishes for a Sleep Powder miss here. No. And instead he decides to go for the Exeggutor to soak the Sleep Powder and try and force a Wake Up. Presumably Tauros comes in here to pressure. As Chansey switches in, perhaps? No? Yep. Diegolh again keeping the sleeping Pokemon in, and Peasounay again exploiting it with that Tauros. Again we don't see the Exeggutor waking up, and again he is forced to switch out. Body Slam again from the Tauros, gets the paralysis on the Golem, fires off a Blizzard, retaliatory Earthquake, which I don't understand. I would have probably, well, I guess he anticipated Starmie there switching into Soak and Explosion, but yeah, so some damage on the Tauros there, but not as much as he might like. And he decides he has to give up the Golem there for not much, but the Tauros comes in now. And it's reasonably threatening, actually. Body Slam, no critical hit. Not necessarily enraged with a Body Slam. A higher one would do it. Does he Hyper Beam here? He body slams again as the Starmie comes in, not deciding to risk the or he can't let Exeggutor, Chansey, or Alakazam come in, all of which can live a Hyper Beam, although with Alakazam it's a roll, and that would allow him to force out this Tauros. He decides he has to go for it versus this Chansey, doesn't get a full para, can fire off a Hyper Beam here, instead goes for another Body Slam, anticipating Exeggutor coming in, doesn't get a paralysis there, in comes the Chansey to take the Exeggutor on, gets exploded on, and this game quickly becoming very simple and very Peasounay sided. Goes for the Hyper Beam there, which should allow the Alakazam to clean up this game at this point, but he misses that Hyper Beam there, which would, I guess the play then would be to try and wake up the Exeggutor, explode on the Alakazam, ideally, or more likely end up exploding on the Chansey, and then go for full paralysis with the Alakazam. But since he misses that Hyper Beam, he doesn't have the opportunity for that. And now Tauros cleans up the game, and Peasounay wins his second game. If Peasounay wins the next game, he wins the set, whilst Diegolh has to win 2 more games to win the set and win the entire Master Tournament at the end of Season 11. Alright, so Game 4. Starmie and Alakazam. Diegolh decides again that it's worthwhile to stay in with Starmie for its ability to block sleep rather than go for a more aggressive early game sleep approach. Both players have shown all set that they prefer a more late game based sleep approach for the most part, rather than deciding that it's worthwhile letting their sleeper get paralyzed early on and making use of that. Or making that trade in order to get sleep early on and then going for a pressure-based approach. So Starmie versus Alakazam is a matchup where Alakazam does have the advantage, albeit a slight one, not an overwhelming one. So we do see Snorlax coming in earlier, pressuring a potential for paralysis. If Alakazam had fully paralyzed there, then that would have put him in quite a bad position there. But in comes the Chansey. Do we see a self-destruct? Do we see Hyper Beam? Do we see a critical hit? We see Exeggutor coming in on the Reflect, which is a great move there. Reflect protects against the self-destruct there, but it does let a pressure switch such as that Exeggutor threaten to sleep powder here. Psychic here would be quite daring, as would a Double Edge or something. But I feel like he has a sleep powder there to keep Peasounay honest, and he goes for it. Peasounay stays in, but he takes it, but he ends up waking up, so it plays out luckily for Peasounay. But Peasounay gets the advantage of the luck there, even though he misplays. Maybe it predicts wrong, but it is a net misplay. But he can't really afford to let to go into Alakazam in one way, since if Snorlax was to double into that, then that Chansey is in some serious issues, because it can't switch into Snorlax Hyper Beam at that range, and Alakazam goes down to Hyper Beam at that range, especially with that little bit of chip damage, making it much more likely. Although he does have the option of, for example, Exeggutor to switch into there. But yeah, just in general, that Snorlax would be much more dangerous. It would more likely be firing off a Body Slam, since at that range, Chansey, after taking a Body Slam and then a Soft Welding, would be in Hyper Beam range as well, so it would be a safe Body Slam for Diegolh if he did get that Snorlax hit on a double, but no. So that's why Peasounay made that play. It was a sort of a 50-50, albeit very much weighted one. Evidently he doesn't have a Starmie or something of that sort, which could stay in there, which should come in there and take sleep without being huge bait for the Snorlax. So that tells us a little something about Peasounay's team, at least, in that he doesn't have a Starmie, or maybe a Lapras or something, is much less likely, since that would have been a line of play over to him. He goes for a double edge there. So yeah, so that was an unfortunate Thunderwave there for Diegolh to take, as this Exeggutor will be doing some serious work. But in comes the Snorlax again, and it is threatening. Peasounay is forced to go to his own Snorlax to take him on. We see a Reflect from Diegolh's Snorlax, revealing that he's not Hyper Beamed. That means that Peasounay's own Chansey is much more comfortable versus it. Sleep Powder is forced here, but he fully paralyzed, so we didn't see whether he went for that or whether he went for a Hyper Beam, for example, which would have for a double edged sword or a Psychic. In comes a Starmie, and gets hit by a Seismic Toss, though it's not quite in range after another, so he goes for a Psychic instead, gets a Special Fall. But this Alakazam looks troubling for Diegolh. Does he have a chance which he can use us as it? He seems that he's going for more of a pressure approach with this Snorlax, but since it's a Reflector and it has a hard time breaking through the Chansey unless he gets that critical hit, which he did get, but a reminder that chance of a critical hit for the Snorlax is even less likely than it is in later generations due to being based on speed. It only has a roughly 1 in 20 chance of getting a critical hit, which is paltry, although still real. Curiously, we do see it Starmie, and it's interesting that Peasounay didn't go with it earlier. That's arguably a misplay for him. Although I guess having the Alakazam and the Starmie there did give him some tools on the flip side to be able to handle whatever special attacker Diegolh might have had, but I would feel much more comfortable versus the other Starmie, maybe with Alakazam, and versus the other Snorlax as well. So, but yeah, this it does feel like Peasounay ends up getting his Exeggutor, his Starmie stuff. Sorry, my brain is the words that are coming out of my mouth and my brain aren't exactly hooked up too well today, are they? But Diegolh lands the Sleep Powder on the Starmie at the cost of most of Diego's HP. Peasounay has effectively got 4 Pokemon left, whilst Diegolh has effectively got 5 or 6, but this Alakazam is quite dangerous, especially if there is no Chansey on Diego's end, which is possible, but I would say unlikely. And this Alakazam is doing good work versus that Starmie, Psychics versus the Snorlax. But this Snorlax is deeply difficult for Peasounay to handle, especially if it's getting body slams like that and stuff. Every time it comes in, it does serious work, but we see a Hyper Beam there, a great play there, preventing, knocking out either the Exeggutor or the Starmie if that switched into Block Sleep there, or Block Psychic, and preventing the Exeggutor from going for Explosion there, or Starmie going for Recover. We see Snorlax follow up. We know that it's not a self-destruct variant, since we saw Reflect revealed earlier on. Peasounay goes into Starmie in order to get some sleep tons burnt, maybe, or to soak a self-destruct. I don't know. I disagree with that play from Peasounay. I would have probably gone to Snorlax or fired off a Psychic with Exeggutor, honestly, at that point. I think I would have definitely stayed in with the Exeggutor and gone for an attack there, but and we see Exeggutor switch in again to pressure the potential Zapdos. Sleep Powder there. Do we see the Exeggutor here win the Seed Dive? We do, but it fully paralyzes. Peasounay gets off the Hyper Beam, and that's a useful piece of luck for Peasounay, and he manages to get one up on the game with that, which is a crucial piece of luck there for Peasounay. He stays in there, doesn't get critical hit, and gets the explosion off on the Zapdos, making Zapdos, which is very threatening, a lot more manageable now. Does he go Tauros or does he go Snorlax? He goes Tauros. The Zapdos is in range of a Blizzard, but not a Body Slam there. But no, he goes for the Body Slam instead, which I find curious. But that does enough to pressure this Snorlax. which Blizzard wouldn't have necessarily. Hyper Beam takes it out, and we do see an Alakazam. Yeah, no Chansey team. Yeah, that was the most likely thing if there wasn't a Chansey, was to be an Alakazam, Starmie, and a Zapdos there. But this is very threatening. Can Thunder Wave here, it can Psychic there, Seismic Toss. This Alakazam looks like it could almost clean up at this point, but if Peasounay gets sufficient luck, he could definitely take it back. Yeah, those are two very threatening Pokemon. Does Peasounay even have a way to win? I mean, that's Snorlax could sort of 1v1 just everything in theory, but he would need some significant luck, and Body Slap 255 is not how it happens. We see a second 255 and we see a critical hit. That was that was an amazingly RBY sequence, wasn't it? That was oh my goodness. And we see Hyper Beam follow up, and all of a sudden, I mean, Peasounay is technically up 3-2, but that Alakazam is very low, that Tauros is very low, but could it gets a KO on the next turn. So we see Snorlax fodder itself. We see presumably Hyper Beam here from Tauros, which prevents either switching in. And then Peasounay has to go for the Alakazam 1v1, which isn't a good position for him to be in, but it's one where theoretically he could win. So let's speed this up now. He's at -2 on the special side of things, making him slower, but he manages to get Diegolh's one down to -2, and it's looking all even almost at this point. Look at this. And he's even down to -3. And Peasounay has managed to turn this losing game into a winning one, which is spectacular. But he definitely got the good side of the luck, not getting critically hit by the Zapdos or fully paralysing with his Exeggutor on the explosion, winning the speed tie versus the Exeggutor with the Hyper Beam, and so on. And now it comes down to this Alakazam Ditto. I'll let the last few turns play out at their own pace as we watch this series conclude, and possibly, well, this battle conclude and possibly the whole series. But if Peasounay wins this game, he wins the whole series. Unfortunately, the PS Replay viewer doesn't let me overview and see the PP or the moves used, so I can't bring you like how far along this really is. But these Alakazams are both at -4 special, which is comedically low and really only seen in this sort of scenario. But it does happen. I mean, this isn't the first time I've seen this happen. It's probably not the last, although it's somewhat rare. It does occasionally happen. We see -5 there on Diegolh's Alakazam, and at this point it barely makes a difference, does it? Besides being slower. Drops Peasounay's down to -5. If Peasounay wins the speed tie, he wins, and that's the game. And that's Peasounay winning Master Tournament number 33. And that's a pretty fantastic overall result for Peasounay. I hope you enjoyed watching. I don't think that my narration was necessarily the best, but hopefully it was alright. And I'll see you another time. Thank you for watching.